This is Immortals of Aveum, and welcome to my review. Honestly, this game was pretty low when it came to games coming out that I was either looking forward to or even ones I was interested in. However, when it was getting ready to come out, it kept popping up on my Steam page, and honestly, it started to catch my attention. Finally, I decided to bite the bullet and try it out. I wasn't disappointed with the way the game turned out. As always, there will be spoilers throughout this, so be warned. So as it normally goes, I'm going to be going over things like the main story, the plot, combat and gameplay, the progression system, equipment system, the leveling and talent trees, enemy faction, a lot of the side content, and last but not least the price. I'll be going over all these things and then giving you a rating at the end of it and giving you my honest opinion if you should buy it, wait for a sale, or just ignore it. So let's talk about Immortals of Aveum. To start off the game, you play as the main character Jack, who's more or less a street urchin for a kid living in a small city that's tucked away from the war, where you will gain a backstory on the Everwar, which is the war going on between Lucium and their immortals, first Basharn and Sandrak, who is leading. The game does a fairly decent job at the beginning setting up the overall story of the game. The premise of the story is pretty cool too. A bunch of wizards fighting in a war that basically whoever wins lets them control everything. You'll soon learn about the things like the ley lines and how magic traverses the world through them. After this, Jack's home is attacked and ends up joining the Lucium army, where he then fights and becomes a Magnus and tries to later on become an immortal, which is essentially one of the elite Magnus in the army. I found the story to be pretty good and pretty annoying at some points. There were a few times where it seemed you could have just destroyed the item that Sandrak was looking for and ended the whole war right there. Instead, Jack decides not to do it and the whole thing just continues. There was a big plot twist too, where your best friend from your old life in your hometown who you thought had died is actually the hand of Sandrak and basically his lieutenant and his right hand man. But honestly, I saw it from the first moment that it happened. I was like, oh, I bet that's Luna. And what do you know, it was. But in my opinion, towards the end of the game where you found out what the real meaning of being an immortal was, which was to essentially serve the immortals and at the end of your tenure you sacrifice your life to heal the wound, this is where the story picked up what it was lacking, which was the emotion and being able to pull me into the story. Other flaws in the story that I found though was I wish there was more interactions with other immortals, being able to fight by their side, or learning more about their backstories, or even why there aren't more than 4 of us. You'll learn some general information about each of them, but honestly, it wasn't enough for me. I didn't really feel connected to the characters themselves. Devin was one of the main side characters and another member of the Immortals, who I thought was extremely annoying at first, but as time went on, I finally felt connected to him, and then boom, out of nowhere he becomes the hero you want him to be, and then he's just killed off. Overall, the game has a decent story. It's not one I will ever find myself wanting to come back to and play over and over again. I didn't really see any replayability in it, but the general concept of the game is great, and I feel like they have a ton of potential to go very far with this type of story and type of game, especially if they're able to continue to improve upon it. I do feel like it is something that you should experience for yourself at least once. When it came to combat and gameplay for this game, I really wasn't expecting too much of it. I mean, it's just a first-person shooter but with magic, right? But man, was I wrong. I actually had a ton of fun with the combat and gameplay. It implements a simple 3-color system. Basically, you have magic that is either blue, red, or green, as well as other skills and spells. You attack an enemy with the same color affinity or color of magic that they possess, and this will allow you to do more damage. Such a simple system provided so much fun that I really did not get bored with it. Even during my second playthrough of the game, I still had just as much fun. Not only does it have a first-person shooter concept to it, you have access to a plethora of different totems that you will gain throughout the game that can assist you inside and outside of combat. You also have access to a bunch of different furies or abilities, each one of these having their own different uses. Personally, I didn't really find myself using many of these except for Shatter or the Time Slow, which was mostly using Shatter to break shields down on bosses very quickly and the Slow to get myself out of sticky situations. Overall, I thought the idea of having a first-person shooter based off magic was a fantastic idea, and it was one of the biggest reasons I kept getting pulled into wanting to give this game a shot, because not a lot of other games have tried it before, and I really wasn't disappointed with how mindlessly fun this game could be. Throughout the game, as you defeat enemies, you will gain experience and continue to level and unlock ascension points, which are essentially this game's version of skill points. You then use these ascension points to unlock new skills within the 3 different skill trees, which pertain to the blue, red, and green skill trees. Now, there is an achievement in the game that requires you to unlock every single skill in each one of these 3 trees, which can honestly be somewhat tedious. Just as when you progress further and further into the game, it becomes more and more difficult to level up. But as you get further in, you will gain bonuses and buffs to get everything like your crit rate and damage for each of the attacks, even gain some bonus dodges and some buffs to your shield, which makes it take a bit more damage and last longer. You even have the ability to gain additional bonuses to all of your totems, such as having additional usage of your whip throughout the game. Throughout the game, each one of these can help you feel more and more powerful when you unlock the bonus abilities and skills. I will also say some of them are subtle passive changes, so you may not notice everything. The game consists of the typical equipment system where as you progress throughout the game, you will find yourself constantly changing equipment and trying to find the best piece that is better than your previous one. Or trying to find the sigil that is going to provide you with the right amount of ammo and damage. It's a nice balancing game. Or a totem that provides you with the best possible substats that you could be looking for. At some point though, this can get a little old. I mean, I just felt like I was swapping out epic gear for epic gear. I maybe found 1 to 2 pieces of legendary equipment throughout the story. And it took me beating the game and completing most of the side content along with collecting the golden chest to start finding more legendary gear. I also didn't really find that I paid much attention to the substats as I should. So for me, I didn't notice that it made a significant difference. Overall, the equipment doesn't change much other than cosmetic for me, at least, is what it felt like. The biggest thing is equipping a new sigil can change the actual sigil that your player is wearing. Next up, I want to talk about the enemy factions within the game, which mostly consists of the Sharnians, and they play a very constant role within the main story. There is a bunch of different enemy types that you will face throughout the game, each of them possessing different abilities and providing different challenges that you'll have to overcome. Things like archers or the Oathbreakers, who are absolute units, as well as melee enemies, and they even offer different types of magnets that you'll be facing off against, such as blue, red, or green ones, each one being more skilled with that certain type of magic. They each have their own unique fighting styles that you will have to overcome. The game also does have other enemies spread throughout it, which consists of constructs and giant robot-like enemies. Those are personally my least favorite since they are such damage sponges. However, once you've kind of seen everything, there isn't much diversity within it. You kind of start seeing the same enemies over and over again throughout the game, especially if you do a second playthrough. But where the game lacks in variety, it makes up in sheer number of enemies it can throw at you. I honestly really wasn't bothered by the lack of variety. I mean, I was having fun no matter what enemy I was going up against. Throughout the game, there's various different pieces of side content for you to complete. For example, the game has a bunch of different scattered golden chests for you to collect throughout the different maps. This can help encourage things like exploration and discovering everything these different maps and worlds have to offer. They also have things called Shroud Fanes, which are other ways for you to gain things like max HP upgrades, as well as a new Fury in one of them. There's also 6 different mini dungeons that contain the 6 strongest magnets for the player to face off against. Most of the side content consists of mostly collecting and exploring, which if you're someone who is into completing the 100% of the game, you'll have a few extra hours of content to complete. But it can get repetitive for some people from time to time. The retail price of the game on Steam is $59.99, and honestly, I would definitely recommend waiting for a sale. The game is super fun and can definitely provide hours of enjoyment, but the lack of a developing story that can keep you entertained for the entire time can steer you away. I do think the game is worth a playthrough, even if it's just once. I mean, you're looking at about a 16-hour main story, depending on how fast you speed through it, or if you focus on any other side content. Well, for me, this just isn't a game I can tell you to go out and buy at full price. But at the same time, I don't think it's something that should just brush off like it's completely boring. The game provides a decent story, as well as extremely fun combat and gameplay. I mean, I was really looking forward to the concept of a first-person shooter with magic, and I really wasn't disappointed by it. Well, there you have it. There's my review of Immortals of Aveum. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around if you made it. If there's any games you want to see me play, or if you're interested in anything, feel free to leave a comment. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to hit the like button, and if you want to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.